My own son pushed me off a mountain, stood above my broken body, and calmly said a time out loud as if my death was already scheduled. I was 68 years old, bleeding, unable to move, and the people I trusted most were waiting to make sure I never stood up again. What would you do if survival depended on staying silent while betrayal stood just a few steps away? Before we begin the story, write the name of your city in the comments so we know where you are watching from. Do not forget to subscribe to this channel. May everyone who subscribes be given good luck, good health, and may everything in your life become easy, amen. My name is Marlena Buford. I am 68 years old, and my bones have started to complain when the weather changes. I used to work as a librarian in Red Hollow, Virginia, the kind of small town where people still wave at you even if they do not remember your name. I am a black woman who spent most of her life keeping things neat, keeping voices low, and keeping the peace inside my own home. That day I tried to do the same. It was early morning when my son, Isaiah, pulled up in front of my house with his wife, Renee. Their car looked expensive, clean, and cold, like they did not want dust or fingerprints on it. I stood on my porch with my hands clasped, feeling the air bite my cheeks. The smell of wet leaves and cold soil came from the yard. My husband, Caleb, locked the door behind me and carried a small bag like we were going on a weekend vacation, not like we were walking into something that had already been decided without us. Isaiah stepped out first. He smiled, but his eyes did not move much. He hugged me with one arm, quick and light. His jacket smelled like strong cologne, sharp and sweet. Renee followed him, wearing clean hiking clothes that looked new, like she bought them for photos. Renee kissed the air near my cheek. Her perfume was floral, too strong for the cold. She looked at my face like she was checking something, like she was counting lines. Caleb shook Isaiah's hand, firm and steady. Caleb is 71, tall, with a quiet face and a careful way of watching people. When he looks at you, he really looks. Isaiah opened the trunk. We will drive to the mountain path. It is a nice place. Fresh air. Good for all of us. Since when do you care about fresh air? Caleb said, gentle but direct. Isaiah laughed once, short. Since my parents started acting like strangers. His words landed heavy. I swallowed and smiled anyway. I told myself, Marlena, you are a mother. You do not fight. Fix. In the car, Renee sat in front beside Isaiah. Caleb and I sat in the back. The heater was too warm and the air felt dry. The road curved through trees and hills. Isaiah played music low, and Renee tapped her finger on her phone screen. She did not turn around once to ask how we were feeling. I watched Isaiah's shoulders while he drove. I remembered him as a little boy with scraped knees and loud laughter. I remembered how he used to sit on the library floor after school, waiting for me to finish work, flipping through comic books. That Isaiah used to look at me like I was home. This Isaiah kept his eyes on the road, and his jaw stayed tight. We stopped at a small store near the park entrance. Isaiah bought bottled water and energy bars. Renee bought nothing. She stood by the door, scrolling her phone like time was more important than people. When I came out with a hot coffee, I offered her one. No, thank you, she said without looking at my hand. Caleb leaned close to me as we walked back to the car. His voice was low. Something is off. Maybe they are stressed, I whispered. Maybe this is their way of trying. Caleb did not answer. His eyes stayed on Renee. When we reached the trail, the sky was pale and cloudy. The trees were tall and thin. The air smelled like pine and damp rock. The path sign said the hike would take about 2 hours. I adjusted my scarf and took a slow breath. My chest felt tight, not from the cold but from the silence between us. Isaiah started walking first. Renee followed close behind him. Caleb stayed at my side. His hand brushed mine, and I held on like I needed the contact to stay steady. As we walked, Renee talked about nothing that mattered. She mentioned house prices, renovations, the new car, and how people in the city did not understand real work. Isaiah nodded, but he barely spoke. When Caleb asked him about his job, Isaiah answered in short sentences, like he wanted the questions to stop. The trail narrowed as we climbed higher. My knees hurt. The ground was uneven, and small stones rolled under my shoes. Focused on each step, I could hear my breath rough and loud in my ears. Somewhere ahead, water trickled down rocks. The sound was thin but constant. I stopped once to drink water. Renee turned around and sighed loud enough for me to hear. "You are doing fine," Caleb told me. His voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp. I forced a smile. "I am fine. I want to finish." Isaiah finally turned back. "We are almost there. The view is worth it." His tone sounded practiced, like he was repeating a line. When we reached a wider part of the path, I saw it. The cliff edge opened to a large drop. Below, trees looked small. The wind was stronger there, pushing against my face and making my eyes water. My stomach tightened. I stepped carefully, staying close to the inner side of the trail. Renee moved toward the edge like she was not afraid. She held her phone up and pointed it at the view. Isaiah stood near her, hands in his pockets. Caleb stayed behind me. Renee turned and smiled at Isaiah. "Stand closer. Your parents too. This will look nice." I hesitated. Caleb's hand touched my elbow. "Stay where you are," he murmured. Isaiah looked at me, then at Caleb. His face changed slightly, like a mask slipping and then returning. "Come on, Mom. Just for a picture." I took one careful step forward. The wind hit me again. The ground under my shoe felt loose, like gravel over hard stone. I heard Renee tapping her phone screen, clicking, setting something. Caleb leaned closer to my ear. His voice was so quiet I almost did not hear it. "Do not turn your back on them." My heart started beating faster. I wanted to laugh it off. I wanted to say Caleb was being too suspicious. I wanted to believe my son would never hurt us. Then it happened. A sudden force hit my side. Hard. A shove that was not an accident. My body tipped. My arms flailed for balance. My fingers caught air. My stomach dropped before my feet did. The world tilted and the sky spun. I heard myself gasp. I heard gravel scatter. I heard Renee inhale, sharp and excited, not scared. Caleb lunged toward me, but another push hit him too. His body slammed into mine, and we both went over the edge. Cold air tore at my face as we fell. My shoulder hit rock. Pain exploded through my arm. My head struck something hard, and my ears rang. The taste of blood filled my mouth, metallic and thick. The world went dark for a moment, then bright again, then dark again. When I landed, my body stopped, but my pain did not. My chest burned. My legs screamed. I could not tell what was broken. I could only feel wet warmth spreading under me. I lay still. The air smelled like dirt and stone. My eyes barely opened. I saw Caleb beside me, his face pale, his breath shallow. Above us, the cliff edge framed the sky. Two shadows moved there. I heard Renee's voice. Did they move? Isaiah's voice came next, quiet. "I do not know." Renee answered like she was checking a list. "Wait. I need the time." I heard her tap her phone. Then she spoke again, clear, calm. 11:07:40. My tears mixed with blood on my cheek. I wanted to scream. I wanted to crawl. I wanted to call Isaiah's name like I did when he was small. Caleb's hand found mine. His fingers trembled, but his grip was firm. He pulled my hand slightly, just enough to make me listen. He whispered, weak but urgent. "Do not move. Pretend we are dead." I wanted to shake my head. I wanted to tell Caleb that I could not feel my left arm and that my leg burned like it was on fire. I wanted to cry out Isaiah's name. But Caleb's fingers pressed into mine, steady and warning, and something inside me understood before my mind did. I stayed still. My body screamed, but I forced it quiet. I slowed my breathing, shallow and careful, like I was trying not to disturb the air itself. Blood slid down my temple and into my ear. The ground was cold against my cheek. I focused on the smell of wet soil and moss, anything to keep myself awake. Above us, I heard footsteps shifting near the edge. Small stones fell and bounced down the rock face, clicking as they landed near us. Each sound made my heart jump. Renee's voice floated down again. I cannot see them clearly. Isaiah answered. They fell hard. No one survives that. There was a pause. My chest tightened. I waited for panic, for shouting, for my son to call my name. Instead, Renee spoke calmly. Did you start the recording? Yes, Isaiah said. Recording. The word felt heavier than the rocks around me. My stomach twisted. Renee exhaled slowly. Good. Just stay a bit longer. It has to look right. Caleb's fingers tightened around mine. His breathing grew uneven. I could hear it now, wet and strained. Fear wrapped around my chest, but I did not move. Minutes passed. Or maybe seconds. Time felt broken. Finally, footsteps moved away. I heard Renee say, "We should go. People hike here." Isaiah hesitated. I heard it in his voice. Mom. That single word cracked something in me. My eyes burned with tears, but I kept them shut. I did not move. I did not answer. Renee spoke sharply. Isaiah. Stop. There was another pause. Then footsteps faded. The sounds above us disappeared, swallowed by wind and distance. Silence followed, thick and heavy. When I was sure they were gone, my body betrayed me. Sob shook my chest. I bit down on my lips so hard I tasted more blood. Caleb turned his head slightly toward me. His eyes were open now, glassy but focused. You alive, he whispered. I nodded barely. The movement sent pain shooting through my neck. My chest, he said, breath catching. It hurts. I am here, I whispered back. My voice sounded small, like it did not belong to me. I tried to move my leg. Fire shot up my side, and I cried out before I could stop myself. The sound echoed off the rocks. Caleb's hand squeezed mine. Easy. We lay there together, broken at the bottom of the mountain, listening to the wind. My thoughts spun. Recording. Timestamp. Planning. My son did not just push us. He prepared for it. The sky above shifted slowly. Clouds moved. Light changed. My body grew cold despite the pain. I worried about falling asleep. I worried about Caleb's breathing growing weaker. I am sorry, I whispered. I wanted to believe. Caleb's eyes closed for a moment. When he opened them again, they looked tired. This is not your fault. We waited. Every minute felt longer than the years I had lived. My arm had gone numb. My leg throbbed in waves. I focused on Caleb's breathing, counting each rise and fall of his chest. At some point I heard voices again. Different ones. Distant, confused. Did you hear something? Yes. Down there. Hope rushed through me so fast it made me dizzy. I wanted to scream. I wanted to wave. But Caleb squeezed my hand again, weak this time. Wait, he whispered. Let them come to us. The voices grew closer. A flashlight beam cut through the shadows, sweeping over rocks and trees. There, someone shouted. They are here. Strong hands touched my shoulder. Someone spoke gently, telling me not to move. A jacket was placed over me. I felt warmth, and then everything blurred. The last thing I saw before darkness took me was Caleb's face. Ill. His eyes fixed on me like he was trying to remember my face. When I woke up, the world smelled like disinfectant and plastic. Machines beeped. My head throbbed. My mouth was dry. I turned my head slowly, heart pounding, and looked to the other bed beside me. It was empty. The emptiness of the bed next to mine hit harder than the fall. My chest tightened, and a low sound escaped my throat before I could stop it. A nurse hurried in, her shoes squeaking on the floor. She placed a gentle hand on my arm and told me to breathe slowly. Where is my husband? I asked. My voice sounded broken, like it had been dragged over stone. The nurse looked at me with eyes that already knew too much. She hesitated. That pause told me everything my heart was trying to deny. He was brought in with severe injuries, she said softly. The doctors did everything they could. Her words floated in the air, slow and careful. I stared at the ceiling, white and blank, and waited for the pain to come. did not arrive all at once. It crept in, quiet and deep, filling every space inside me. Closed my eyes. Caleb's last breath played in my mind. The way his fingers held mine, even as his body failed him. "I need to see him," I whispered. The nurse nodded and left the room. Minutes later, a doctor came in, explaining injuries and procedures, using words that sounded far away. I listened without hearing. All I could think was that Caleb kept me alive long enough to lose him. They wheeled me into a quiet room. Caleb lay there, still and calm, like he was sleeping after a long day. His face looked peaceful, almost younger. I reached out with my good hand and touched his arm. It was cold. "I stayed still," I whispered. "Just like you said." My tears fell onto the white sheet. No one rushed me. They left me alone with him, and I thanked them for that. Later that day, Isaiah arrived. I heard his voice before I saw him. Loud. "Chicken." He rushed into the room, his eyes red. His hair messy like he had been pulling at it. Renee followed behind him, quieter, her face pale and serious. "Mom," Isaiah said, dropping to his knees beside my bed. He grabbed my hand, careful around the bandages. His grip felt familiar, and for a moment, my body reacted before my mind could stop it. "I thought we lost you," he cried. I looked at him. Really looked. His tears were real. His shaking felt real. But something was missing. His eyes never went to the empty bed beside me. Renee stood near the door, arms crossed. She did not cry. She nodded once at me. "I am sorry," she said. Her voice was flat, controlled. I said nothing. My throat felt too tight. My mind replayed her calm voice at the cliff. 11:07:40. A police officer came later that evening. He asked questions gently, taking notes on a small pad. He called it a tragic accident. Slip. Loose gravel. Isaiah held my hand the whole time. He answered some questions for me, saying I was confused, in shock. Renee added details about the hike, about how careful they had been. I listened. He nodded. Played my part. Because I knew something they did not. I was alive. And I remembered everything. When they left, I stared at the door long after it closed. My heart felt heavy, but my mind was clear for the first time since the fall. They thought I was broken. They were wrong. The days after Caleb's death moved slowly, like the hospital clocks were tired too. My body healed in pieces. Bruises changed color. My leg stayed wrapped and stiff. My arm remained weak. Pain visited me in waves, especially at night when the lights were low and memories grew loud. Isaiah came every day. He brought flowers that smelled too sweet. He brought soup from restaurants I used to like. He sat by my bed and talked about nothing. Work, traffic, the weather. He avoided Caleb's name like it might burn his tongue. Renee came only twice. She stood near the door both times, checking her phone while Isaiah spoke. She asked the nurses about my recovery time, about when I could walk again, about when I could go home. Not once did she ask how I felt. The police returned on the fourth day. A different officer this time. He introduced himself as Sheriff Lyle Hartman. His handshake was firm. His eyes were kind but tired, like he had seen too many stories end badly. "I just want to go over a few things again," he said. "For clarity." I answered slowly. I described the hike, the cold, the narrow path. I did not lie, but I did not tell everything. I said I lost my balance. I said everything happened fast. He listened, nodding, writing. When he asked about Isaiah and Renee, I said they were ahead of us. I said I did not see clearly. Isaiah squeezed my hand gently. Too gently. After the sheriff left, Isaiah leaned close. "You did great, Mom. The doctor said stress can mess with memory." I looked at him and smiled. Yes, memory is strange. That night, after everyone left, a nurse brought me a small bag of my belongings. Inside was my phone, cracked but working, and Caleb's wallet. When I opened it, I found something I had never seen before. A folded piece of paper. My hands trembled as I opened it. Caleb's handwriting filled the page. Careful. Marlena, if you are reading this, something has happened. My breath caught. I read every word slowly, like if I rushed, the truth might disappear. Caleb wrote about bank statements that did not make sense. About Isaiah asking strange questions about insurance and property. About Renee pushing paperwork in front of us during family dinners. He wrote that he did not want to upset me, that he hoped he was wrong, that he loved our son, but love should not make you blind. At the bottom of the page was a date. Months before the hike. My chest hurt in a different way now. I stared at the ceiling for a long time after that. The puzzle pieces lined up, sharp and clear. The trip. The recording. Calm voices. They planned this. The next morning, I asked the nurse for a notebook and a pen. My hand shook as I wrote, but my thoughts did not. I wrote everything I remembered. Every word. Every sound. Every second. 11:07:40. I circled the time again and again. If Renee spoke it out loud, it meant it mattered. And if it mattered, it could be traced. I was discharged from the hospital 2 weeks later. My body was slower, weaker, but my mind was sharper than it had ever been. Isaiah insisted I stay with him and Renee. He said my house was too quiet, too full of memories. He was right about one thing. It was full of memories. But that was exactly why I wanted to go home. I will be fine, I told him. Caleb built that house with me. I belong there. Renee did not argue. She simply nodded. We can arrange a nurse to visit. Her eyes flicked to my cane, then back to my face. At home, everything smelled like Caleb. His chair. His books. The kitchen where he used to stand quietly while I cooked. I cried alone that first night, pressing my face into his pillow so no one could hear me. The next day, Isaiah came with documents. Insurance forms. Legal papers. He said it was easier to handle things early. I trust you, I told him. And I meant it in a different way than he thought. I signed nothing. I told him I needed time. He looked frustrated but hid it quickly. I began to watch them closely. Renee counted things. Money. Movements. She always knew where Isaiah's phone was. She asked about my doctor appointments more than my pain. One afternoon, when Isaiah stepped out to take a call, I watched Renee scroll through her phone. Her face was calm, focused. You are very organized, I said softly. She looked up startled, then smiled. Someone has to be. That night, I went through Caleb's old laptop. It took time, but I found what he had been tracking. Bank transfers. Policy numbers. Renee's name appeared more than once. I did not rush. I learned. Copied. Save. Grief made me invisible to them. They saw a tired old woman who needed help. They did not see the librarian who knew how to follow paper trails. Weeks passed. I practiced walking. I practiced patience. Then I called Sheriff Hartman. I remembered something, I told him. Continue. Episode 6. The Shape of Truth. Sheriff Hartman came to my house on a quiet afternoon. The sky was gray, and the wind moved slowly through the trees, like it was listening. He took off his hat when he entered and looked around the living room. His eyes paused on the framed photo of Caleb and me on our anniversary. I am sorry for your loss, he said again. I nodded and sat carefully on the couch. My legs still ached, but I did not show it. Pain had become something I kept private. I did not remember everything before, I said. But grief clears some things and sharpens others. He waited. He did not rush me. At the cliff, I continued, my daughter-in-law spoke a time out loud. 11:07:40. He looked up. His pen stopped moving. That is not something people say in panic, I added. It sounded prepared. He leaned back slightly. Why would she do that? I do not know yet, I said. But my husband suspected financial issues before he died. I handed him copies of what I had found. Bank records. I did not give him everything. Not yet. He studied the papers in silence. This will take time, he said carefully. And I need more than suspicion. I understand, I replied. I am not asking for an arrest. I am asking you to look. When he left, my heart raced. I knew I had stepped onto a dangerous path. Isaiah called that night, checking in, asking if I was resting. I am, I said. Thinking helps me rest. His pause on the line told me everything. 2 days later, Renee came alone. She brought soup and a polite smile. She sat across from me, crossing her legs neatly. You spoke to the sheriff, she said. It was not a question. I looked at her. I remembered something. Her eyes hardened for a moment, then softened again. Trauma does strange things. So does greed, I replied. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Renee stood. We only want what is fair. I watched her walk out, her back straight, her steps steady. And I knew the game had begun. After Renee left my house, I did not sleep that night. I sat in Caleb's chair and listened to the clock on the wall. Each tick felt louder than the last. I replayed every look Renee gave me, every word she chose carefully. She knew I was no longer harmless. The next morning Isaiah called. Mom, he said softly, too softly. Renee and I are worried about you. You have been alone too much. I am fine, I answered. Being alone helps me think. There was a pause. Then he said, we were thinking, maybe it would be good for us to go back to the mountain. For closure. For Dad. My hand tightened around the phone. The mountain. The word brought back the sound of wind, the smell of stone, the sudden weightless moment before the fall. I want to do it right, Isaiah continued. Just us. No police. No questions. We can pray, remember him. Pray. The word felt wrong coming from his mouth. I will go, I said. He exhaled, relief clear in his voice. Really? Yes, I replied. I want peace. That part was true. Just not in the way he expected. We agreed on the date. 1 week later. I hung up and sat still for a long time, letting fear pass through me without taking control. That afternoon I visited Sheriff Hartman again. This time I brought everything. Every copy. Every note. Every detail I had held back. They invited me back to the mountain, I said. His jaw tightened. That is not normal. I know, I replied. That is why you need to be ready. He did not argue. He asked questions. He listened. He planned. The day of the trip arrived cold and clear. Isaiah picked me up early. Renee sat in the front seat again, quiet, her phone resting on her lap. As we drove, I watched the road. I watched their reflections in the mirror. Renee's hand rested near her phone the entire time. At the trail, the air felt heavier than before. The trees stood tall and still. No birds sang. We walked the same path. My leg protested, but I did not stop. I wanted them to see my strength. When we reached the cliff, my heart pounded, but my face stayed calm. This is where it happened, Isaiah said, voice shaking. Renee lifted her phone. Say what you want to say, she told me. I stepped forward carefully. The wind brushed my face. I remember everything, I said. Isaiah froze. Renee's smile faded. I remember the shove, I continued. I remember the time you spoke. 11:07:40. Renee's hand trembled. Behind us, footsteps sounded on the path. Isaiah turned. And then the sirens began. The sound of sirens cut through the mountain air, sharp and impossible to ignore. Red and blue lights flashed between the trees, breaking the calm sky into pieces. Isaiah's face drained of color. Renee stepped back without thinking, her heels slipping on loose gravel before she caught herself. What is this? Isaiah shouted, turning to me. Mom, what did you do? I did not answer him. My eyes stayed on Renee. Sheriff Hartman emerged from the trees with 2 officers behind him. His expression was firm, no kindness left to soften it. He raised his hand, signaling everyone to stay where they were. Isaiah Buford. Renee Buford, he said clearly. We need you to step away from the edge. Renee's fingers tightened around her phone. Her jaw clenched. For a moment I thought she might run. "This is insane," Isaiah said. His voice cracked. "This was an accident." Sheriff Hartman looked at him calmly. "We have reason to believe otherwise." Renee laughed suddenly. "Or, based on what?" "An old woman's memory." I turned to her slowly. "An old woman who survived." The officers moved closer. One of them gently guided me away from the edge. My legs shook now, not from weakness, but from the release of fear I had carried for months. Sheriff Hartman continued. "We recovered deleted audio files from your phone. Time stamped. Location tagged." Renee's face changed. Not fear. Anger. Isaiah looked at her. "What files?" She did not look back at him. "You recorded the fall," the sheriff said. "Not for memory. For proof." Isaiah stepped toward her. "Renee, tell me this is not true." She finally faced him. Her eyes were cold. "I told you to stay calm. You always panic." His mouth opened then closed. Something broke in his expression. The sun I raised disappeared completely in that moment. The officers took Renee's phone. She did not resist. Isaiah did. He shouted. He cried. He called my name like he was a child again. I watched silently as handcuffs closed around their wrists. As they were led away, Isaiah turned back to me, tears running down his face. "I did not mean for him to die," he said. I met his eyes. "You meant for us to fall." The mountain stood quiet again once they were gone. The wind moved through the trees like nothing had happened. I closed my eyes and let myself breathe. The trial did not begin right away. Time stretched again, but this time I was no longer waiting in fear. I waited in truth. I sat in the courtroom every day they allowed me to attend. My leg still ached when I walked, and my arm never fully regained its strength. Pain had settled into my body like a permanent resident. But I welcomed it. Pain meant I was still here. Isaiah avoided my eyes. When he did look at me, his face twisted with regret, fear, and something else I did not recognize anymore. Renee sat straight, calm, her hands folded like she was attending a meeting, not answering for a life she tried to erase. When they played the audio in court, the room went silent. Renee's voice filled the space. "Clear. Teddy. 11:07:40. Isaiah covered his face. Renee stared ahead, unmoved. Testified slowly. I spoke about the hike, the shove, the fall, and Caleb's last words. My voice did not shake. I did not cry. I told the truth as it happened, plain and direct. When I mentioned Caleb telling me to pretend we were dead, several people in the room looked away. That night I returned home alone. I sat at the kitchen table where Caleb used to read the paper. I placed his notebook in front of me and traced his handwriting with my finger. "You saved me," I whispered into the quiet room. The verdict came on a cold morning. Guilty. The word echoed in my chest. Isaiah collapsed into his chair. Renee finally showed emotion. Not sorrow. Anger. As they were taken away, I did not stand. I did not wave. I did not forgive. I simply stayed seated, breathing. Survival carries weight. Asks questions without words. It leaves marks deeper than scars. And it does not let you forget. I returned to Red Hollow quietly. There were no reporters waiting, no neighbors asking questions. Life in a small town moves forward even when someone's world has split open. The leaves changed color again. The air grew sharp. Time did what it always does. Kept going. I cleaned the house room by room. Not to erase Caleb, but to make space for myself. I folded his clothes slowly. Kept his books. I fixed the loose board on the porch he always meant to repair. Each task grounded me. Each day reminded me that I was still capable. At night, I slept in our bed alone. Some nights were harder than others. I woke to silence instead of his breathing. I reached for a hand that was no longer there. I let the ache come and go without fighting it. I stopped using the cane after a few months. My leg never healed perfectly, but it carried me where I needed to go. I walked to the library again, not as an employee, but as a visitor. The smell of paper and dust felt familiar. The young librarian smiled at me like she did not know my story, and I was grateful for that. People asked about Isaiah sometimes. Answered simply. He made choices. Made mine. On quiet mornings, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and listened to the town wake up. Cars passed. Birds landed on the fence. Life unfolded without asking my permission. I spoke to Caleb in my thoughts. I told him about the small things. The repaired porch. The new flowers. The way the sun hit the living room in the afternoon. I told him I stayed still when he asked me to. I told him it mattered. I am not the woman I was before the fall. I'm slower, more careful, less willing to ignore what feels wrong. I do not soften the truth to protect people who would harm me. I am still here. I visit the mountain once a year now. Not the cliff. I do not need to see that place again. I stop at the lower trail where the ground is steady and the trees stand close together. The air there smells clean, honest. I bring a small folding chair and sit for a while, listening to the wind move through the branches. I talk to Caleb out loud. No one is around to hear me, and even if there were, I would not care. I tell him about my days. I tell him my leg still hurts when it rains. I tell him I finally fixed the kitchen drawer he used to complain about. I tell him I kept his notebooks safe. Sometimes I cry. Sometimes I do not. I have learned that grief is not loud forever. It becomes quiet. It sits with you like an old companion. Heavy but familiar. Isaiah writes letters from prison. I do not open them. I place them in a box in the hallway closet. I am not ready to read words that come too late. Renee never wrote. People think survival is about strength. They are wrong. Survival is about clarity. It is about knowing when silence protects you and when it kills you. It is about staying still long enough to live, and standing up only when the ground is solid. I no longer apologize for taking space. I no longer explain my boundaries. I do not confuse love with sacrifice. Each morning I wake up, open the curtains, and let light fill the room. I make my coffee the way Caleb liked it. Strong. Simple. I am 68 years old. I am a black woman from a small town. I survived betrayal, loss, and a fall that was meant to end me. I did not disappear. I stayed. This story teaches that danger does not always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from people we trust the most. Love without awareness can turn into blindness, and silence can become a form of self-harm. The story reminds us that age does not mean weakness, and being quiet does not mean being powerless. True strength is the ability to observe, remember, and act with clarity when the moment demands it. Survival is not only about staying alive, but about refusing to let betrayal erase your dignity and truth. This story is a work of fiction. All characters, events, locations, and situations are created for storytelling purposes. Any resemblance to real people or real events is purely coincidental. The story is written to feel realistic so that meaningful lessons can be taken from it. Thank you for listening and staying until the end. If you enjoyed this story, please share your thoughts in the comments. Do not forget to like and subscribe so you will not miss the next story.